The afternoon sun hung low over the quiet Seattle suburb, painting the neighborhood in a warm golden glow. Evelyn Hart, with her calm smile and easy grace, walked down the familiar street toward her neighbor's house. She carried a small box of homemade lemon squares, something she baked often but shared only with people she respected. Today, they were for Mrs. Bennett, the kind older woman who had lived next door since Evelyn moved in 2 years ago. Nothing about this visit was supposed to be special. Nothing about this walk hinted that her heart was about to learn something it hadn't felt in years. But life has a habit of shifting when we least expect it. Evelyn wasn't looking for romance. She wasn't looking for anything, really. After her breakup last winter, she promised herself a long season of peace, no dramatic feelings, no unexpected entanglements. She simply wanted to offer a neighborly gesture, share a conversation, and return home to her quiet evening. But as she stepped onto the white-railed porch and knocked, the door didn't open to her gentle, silver-haired neighbor. It opened to him. Landon Bennett. Mrs. Bennett's son. He was supposed to live in Chicago, working long hours as a marketing strategist. But there he stood, tall, broad-shouldered, ocean-blue eyes, hair slightly messy like he'd run his hands through it one too many times. He looked as if life had pushed him around, yet he still stood with a quiet, stubborn strength. Evelyn's breath caught without permission. And from the quick spark in Landon's eyes, she wasn't the only one surprised. "Evelyn, right," he said, voice warm and unexpectedly soft. "Mom talks about you all the time." "She does." Evelyn forced a polite laugh, hoping he didn't notice the way her fingers tightened on the box of lemon squares. "I just came to bring her these." Landon stepped aside, letting the sunlight stream past his shoulder. "She's resting. Had a long morning at the clinic. But she'll be happy you stopped by." Evelyn hesitated. She wasn't planning on staying. She definitely wasn't planning on being alone in the house with him. Something about Landon carried a weight and emotional intensity that felt magnetic. Not dangerous. Not inappropriate. Just unexpectedly strong. Still, she stepped inside, reminding herself this was just neighborly kindness. Nothing more. Yet the moment she entered, she felt his presence behind her. Not close. Not improper. But present in a way that made her heartbeat shift rhythm. The living room smelled like warm coffee and old books. Landon walked ahead of her, moving boxes aside. He must have recently arrived. "I'm helping Mom reorganize," he said, offering a small smile. "She keeps everything. I found birthday cards from when I was 6. "That sounds like her," Evelyn said, unable to stop her own smile. Then came a silence. Not awkward, just charged with something unspoken. He studied her carefully. Too carefully. "You're nothing like the people around here," he said gently, almost thoughtfully. She blinked. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" "It's a good thing," he answered, voice low. "A very good thing." Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with a strange, warm tension she hadn't felt in months. Something inside her whispered that she should leave before emotions complicated what was supposed to be a simple visit. She set the lemon squares on the counter. "Tell your mom I hope she enjoys them." Landon didn't move. His blue eyes softened, troubled by something she couldn't read. "You're leaving already?" "I should," she replied. "Didn't want to interrupt anything." "You're not interrupting." He stepped back slightly, but she could still feel the gentleness of his attention. "Actually, it's nice having someone here who isn't dealing with my mess." "Your mess?" He laughed quietly, more heartbreak than humor. "Another time. It's a long story." The way he said it made her wonder. Made her want to ask. Made her want to stay. But she reached for the doorknob. Before she turned it, Landon spoke again, soft, reluctant, but bold in a way that made her pulse flutter. "Evelyn, if you ever feel like staying longer next time, I wouldn't mind." Her fingers froze on the doorknob. And in that suspended moment, she realized something unsettling. She wanted there to be a next time. She wanted to know the story behind his tired eyes. She wanted to understand why being near him made her feel something stirring, something she thought she had buried. She stepped outside, heart unsteady. But Landon's last words echoed behind her like a whisper she couldn't shake. That night, Evelyn tried to lose herself in her usual routine: tea, soft music, a candle flickering on the windowsill. But the quiet didn't feel peaceful the way it normally did. It felt crowded, filled with thoughts she didn't invite. And every one of them had the same name: Landon Bennett. She set her mug down a little too quickly. Why was she thinking about him this much? She barely knew him. She had only exchanged a few sentences with him. Yet something in his eyes, tired but sincere, guarded but vulnerable, had reached straight under the armor she spent months building. She went to the window, looking toward the Bennett house. A single warm light glowed behind their living room curtains. She wondered if he was still awake. She wondered what he was thinking. She wondered if she'd imagined the intensity in the way he looked at her. But when she finally drifted to sleep, the last thing she remembered was his voice. "If you ever feel like staying longer next time, I wouldn't mind." The next morning came with gray clouds and a soft drizzle. Seattle weather, familiar and soothing. Evelyn grabbed her umbrella and headed out for a quick grocery run. But as she stepped outside, she nearly froze. Landon was standing on his mother's porch with a toolbox, sleeves rolled up, rain speckling his hair. He looked up just as she tried, unsuccessfully, to pretend she hadn't noticed him. Their eyes met. His smile was small, gentle, and unmistakably warm. "Morning, Evelyn." She tried to hide the sudden flutter in her chest. "Morning. Fixing something?" "Trying," he said with a short laugh. "Mom's porch light keeps flickering. I told her I'd handle it." There it was again, that quiet responsibility, the kind that made a person seem softer and stronger at the same time. Something about it tugged at her heart. She nodded toward the street. "I'm just heading to the store. Do you want company?" he asked before he seemed to think it through. "I mean, only if you don't mind." Evelyn hesitated. She should say no. She barely knew him. He was going through something he hadn't explained. Her peaceful life didn't need complications. But the truth slipped out on its own. "I wouldn't mind." His smile deepened, slow, grateful, almost relieved. "Let me grab my jacket." A few minutes later, they were walking side by side beneath her umbrella, the rain tapping a steady rhythm above them. At first, they walked quietly. Then, unexpectedly, Landon spoke. "You know, I wasn't even supposed to be here." His voice was calm but carried a weight beneath it. "Oh," she said gently. "Why did you come back?" He let out a breath, watching the ground as they walked. "Chicago became too loud, too stressful, too full of things I wasn't ready to face anymore." He paused. Coming here was supposed to be temporary. Evelyn didn't push. She sensed this wasn't a story to force open. After a moment, he glanced at her again. "It's strange. I came back to get space. To breathe. But yesterday, when you walked in, I felt something shift." Her pulse skipped. "Shift?" "Yeah," he said quietly. "Like maybe I don't have to be so closed off anymore." Her breath caught. She didn't know what to say to that, not without revealing that she felt a pull too, one she wasn't ready to name. Inside the small neighborhood store, they talked more easily. He cracked soft jokes. She teased him about picking the wrong cereal brand. For a moment, their laughter blended with the soft hum of the aisles, making the world feel lighter. But something deeper lingered under the surface, unspoken, yet impossible to ignore. When they stepped back outside, the rain had stopped. A thin ray of sunlight peeked through the clouds, touching everything with a gentle glow. Landon looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For letting me walk with you. For making the morning feel normal. I haven't felt that in a long time." The sincerity in his voice hit her harder than she expected. "I'm glad," she said, meaning it more than she meant to. They reached her house. She turned toward her door, but before she stepped inside, he asked quietly, "Evelyn, do you think we could talk again later? Maybe, if you're not busy, come over for dinner? Mom would love it. And I'd like it too." Her heart trembled in a way that scared her and warmed her all at once. "I'll think about it," she whispered. And the soft way Landon nodded, patient, hopeful, almost tender, made her realize something undeniable. She wanted to say yes. But wanting something that much, that was exactly what frightened her. All afternoon, Evelyn tried to convince herself she wasn't thinking about dinner. She cleaned her kitchen twice, reorganized a drawer that didn't need reorganizing, and even tried reading a book only to realize she had reread the same paragraph 6 times. Her mind kept drifting back to the same image. Landon standing on the porch that morning, rain in his hair, eyes full of something gentle but troubled, something that made her chest feel tight and strangely alive. By late afternoon, she finally gave up pretending. She put on a soft cream sweater, brushed her hair, and stared at herself in the mirror. She wasn't dressing up for him, she repeated that to herself. She was simply trying to look presentable for a neighborly dinner. Except, the quiet excitement fluttering inside her said otherwise. At exactly 6:10 p.m., she walked next door. The Bennett house glowed with warm light. She knocked once. The door opened almost immediately. And there he was. Landon's expression softened the moment he saw her, like he'd been hoping all day that she would actually come. "You came," he said, voice low with unhidden relief. "I said I'd think about it," she replied with a shy smile. "I thought about it." His answering smile was small, boyish, and somehow heartbreakingly sincere. Inside, the place smelled like rosemary chicken and something warm baking in the oven. Mrs. Bennett came out from the kitchen with a soft wool shawl wrapped around her shoulders. "Evelyn, dear," she exclaimed. "Oh, I'm so happy you're joining us tonight." The tenderness in her voice eased Evelyn's nerves. Mrs. Bennett talked about gardening, old stories, and little neighborhood anecdotes. But now and then, Evelyn caught Landon watching her, quietly, thoughtfully, with a look she didn't know how to interpret. Dinner was simple but comforting. The kind that made a house feel like a home. But the shift began when Mrs. Bennett excused herself to rest, leaving the two of them alone at the table. Only the soft hum of the dishwasher and the warm kitchen light filled the silence around them. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Landon exhaled slowly. "I should probably explain why I came back," he said, eyes lowering. "You don't have to," she replied gently. "I want to." He paused. "I was engaged." Evelyn's heart skipped, but not from jealousy. From the heaviness in his tone. "We were supposed to get married last summer," he continued, fingers tracing the rim of his glass. "But I found out she'd been distant. Cold. Then one day she said she didn't want the life we planned anymore." Evelyn felt a quiet ache settle in her chest. "I thought Chicago would feel the same without her," he said. But it didn't. Every street, every restaurant, every weekend, it all reminded me that I'd been loving someone who stopped loving me long before she told me." She swallowed softly. "That must have hurt." His eyes lifted to hers, open, honest, raw. "It did. More than I thought it would. And I didn't want anyone to know. Not even Mom. So I pretended. I worked longer hours. Stayed out later. Tried to distract myself." A small, humorless laugh escaped him. Turns out distractions make things worse. Something inside her shifted, an unexpected tenderness. "Landon," she said quietly, "you didn't deserve that." For a moment, emotion flickered in his eyes, like he wasn't used to being spoken to with such softness. "I don't know why I'm telling you all this," he murmured. "I barely know you." She smiled faintly. "Sometimes it's easier to be honest with someone new." He studied her for a long moment. "You make it easy," he admitted. "And that scares me a little." Her breath caught, not because his words were bold, but because they reflected exactly what she had been feeling too. Before she could respond, a sudden flicker of lightning lit the window. A soft rumble of thunder followed. Rain began tapping against the glass, steady, rhythmic, intimate. Landon leaned back slightly, watching the storm. "You ever feel like the universe tries to slow you down?" he asked. "Push you toward things you weren't expecting?" She looked at him, heart trembling. "Yes," she whispered. "I think I'm starting to understand that feeling." Another moment passed, quiet, charged, full of possibilities and fears neither dared to name. Then Mrs. Bennett's voice called faintly from down the hall, breaking the moment. Landon stood. "I'll check on her," he said softly. "But, Would you stay a little longer? Just until the rain slows. Evelyn hesitated only a heartbeat. Okay, she said. But deep down, she knew the truth. It wasn't the rain keeping her there. It was him. And neither of them was ready to admit just how quickly things were beginning to change. The rain didn't slow. It softened, then strengthened again, tapping the windows like a quiet insistence. Evelyn sat on the living room couch, hands folded in her lap, listening to the distant murmur of Landon speaking to his mother down the hallway. She couldn't make out the words, but the gentleness in his voice carried across the house. There was something deeply human about him, strong but breakable, guarded but craving connection. And she hated how much that moved her. A moment later, Landon returned, rubbing the back of his neck. She's fine, he said. Just needed help with her medication. He sat across from her, not too close, not too far. But even from that distance, she felt the quiet gravity between them, the same pull that started the moment he opened the door to her yesterday. Thunder rumbled, closer this time. Storm's not letting up, he said softly. I don't mind staying a little longer, she admitted, and immediately felt heat rise to her cheeks. He noticed. His smile was small, almost shy, but undeniably warm. I'm glad, he whispered. For a while they just listened to the rain. The room felt calmer than outside, glowing in the soft lamplight. Somewhere in that silence, Landon leaned forward slightly. Evelyn, can I ask you something? And you don't have to answer if it's too personal. She nodded slowly. Go ahead. Why do you live alone? His voice was gentle, curious, not invasive. You seem like someone who gave a lot of love once. Someone who doesn't do anything halfway. Her breath caught. He wasn't wrong. She just wasn't used to someone seeing her that clearly. She looked down at her hands. I was in a long relationship, she said quietly. 5 years. I really thought we'd build a life together. She paused, swallowing. But he wanted a version of me that never quite matched who I really was. And every year, I felt myself shrinking just to make him stay. Landon's brows drew together, pain flickering in his eyes, pain on her behalf. You didn't deserve that either, he murmured. Eventually, she continued, I realized I'd forgotten how to want anything for myself. So when we ended things, I promised I'd spend time healing. Relearning who I am when I'm not bending for someone else. Quiet stretched between them, soft, emotional, heavy with understanding. Landon exhaled slowly. We're both trying to heal, he said. Maybe that's why this, he gestured gently between them, feels so different. Her pulse stumbled. Does it feel that way to you too? She whispered. His eyes lifted to hers, unshielded, unguarded, honest. Yes, he said simply. More than I expected. More than I know how to handle. The words lingered in the air, warm and dangerous in a way that wasn't inappropriate, just deeply human. A sudden flash of lightning brightened the room, followed by a hard clap of thunder. Instinctively, Evelyn flinched. She didn't mean to. But her reaction broke the tension, softened it. You okay? Landon asked, his voice laced with concern. She laughed lightly, embarrassed. I've never liked storms. He hesitated for a moment, then moved a little closer on the couch, slow enough to give her every chance to pull away. She didn't. You don't have to say anything, he said quietly, but, if you're uncomfortable, I'm here. His tone wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't romantic. It was sincere. Protective. A tenderness that felt safer than the storm outside. Evelyn breathed in slowly, trying to steady her voice. I'm okay. Just jumpy. He nodded, eyes softening. Good. I don't want you to feel uneasy. Not here. Something in her chest bloomed at that, fragile, unexpected, warm. Outside, rain cascaded harder, blurring the windows. Inside, the cocoon of lamplight and quiet made everything feel more intimate than either of them intended. Landon leaned back slightly, studying her like he was memorizing the moment. You know, he said, voice low but steady, you walked into this house yesterday without knowing how much I needed someone like you. Her breath trembled. Someone like me? He held her gaze. Someone honest. Someone gentle. Someone who looks at me like I'm still worth something, even after everything. Emotion pressed against her ribs, stealing her breath for a second. She didn't know if it was the storm, the quiet, or the raw vulnerability between them, but she felt herself opening in ways she hadn't opened in years. Lightning flashed again. The house hummed. Their eyes held. And for the first time, neither of them tried to look away. The moment grew warm, delicate, and charged, dangerously close to becoming something deeper. Then, unexpectedly, the porch light flickered once, twice, and went out completely, plunging the living room into a soft, dim glow. Evelyn gasped. Landon stood immediately. "It's okay," he said gently. "The power just tripped. I'll check the breaker." But right before he stepped away, he paused, looked back at her, and said softly, "Stay here. I'll be right back. Don't disappear on me." She felt the words in her chest more than her ears. Because deep down, she didn't want to disappear. Not from him. Not now. Evelyn waited in the dim living room, the soft glow from a single lamp casting long shadows across the walls. Rain poured steadily outside, the sound wrapping the house in a cocoon of quiet intensity. She listened to Landon's footsteps in the hallway, the small clack of the breaker box, and the low rumble of thunder outside. Everything felt suspended, like the night was holding its breath. A moment later, the power blinked back on. Soft light filled the room again, gentle and warm. Landon returned, brushing dust from his hands. "Breaker's old," he said with a crooked smile. "It likes to get dramatic during storms." "You fixed it fast," she said, smiling back. He walked toward her, slowly, as if approaching something fragile. "You stayed," he said quietly. "You asked me to. I didn't expect you to listen." "Well," she whispered, feeling her heartbeat shift, "I didn't expect to want to." The room grew still. Landon stopped a few steps away, studying her like he was seeing truth he didn't dare put into words. "Evelyn," he said softly, "I need to be honest with you. I don't know where my life is going yet. I don't know what the next month looks like, or if I'm strong enough to start anything new." "I'm not asking you to start anything," she replied gently. "And I don't know my next steps either." His expression softened, relief and longing flickering together. "But you make things feel possible again." Her breath trembled. "You make me feel seen again." Silence stretched between them, warm and trembling. Another roll of thunder shook the windows. Landon moved closer, not rushing, not assuming, just closing the distance slowly, carefully. When he sat beside her, their knees brushed lightly. A small, quiet spark traveled up her spine. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't plan on letting someone matter this quickly." "I didn't either." For a moment, neither looked away. Then Landon's voice dipped into something delicate, almost fearful. "Does this scare you?" She nodded. "Yes. But in the right way." A soft smile tugged at his lips, a smile filled with hope that looked unfamiliar on him, as though he hadn't felt it in a long time. "Evelyn," he said slowly, "I'm not ready for something perfect. I'm not ready for promises." But, he hesitated, emotion rising in his voice. "I'm ready to be honest. And right now, honestly, I don't want this, whatever it is, to end when tonight does." Her chest tightened with something warm, tender, and dangerously real. "I don't want it to end either," she whispered. He let out a shaky breath, relief breaking across his face. "Good. Because I don't think I could pretend this didn't happen." Before she could speak, his mother's soft footsteps echoed down the hall. Mrs. Bennet appeared with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Oh dear," she said, smiling sleepily, "looks like the storm might last a while." She glanced between them, kind eyes taking in the closeness, the warmth, the shift she could sense even if they didn't say it aloud. "You're welcome to stay until it settles," she said to Evelyn. And then, with the sort of knowing smile only a mother could give, she added, "You don't have to rush home tonight." Then she disappeared back into her room, leaving them in a silence filled with new meaning. Landon looked at Evelyn. She looked back. Neither moved away. He spoke first, voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to cross any lines. But, may I sit closer?" Her pulse stuttered, soft, nervous, hopeful. "Yes," she breathed. He moved gently, letting his shoulder rest against hers, warm and steady. The contact wasn't bold, wasn't rushed, it was simple, tender, unmistakably intimate without crossing any line. And in that moment, with rain singing against the windows and the house glowing softly around them, something settled between them. A beginning. Not dramatic. Not reckless. Not rushed. A beginning built on honesty, healing, and quiet understanding. Evelyn rested her head lightly against his shoulder. Landon's breath hitched just once before he relaxed into her, as though he had been waiting for this without admitting it. Outside, the storm continued. Inside, for the first time in a long time, both of them felt a calm they hadn't known they needed. A calm that whispered, maybe this is where broken hearts learn to start again.